Friends, when you travel throughout Canada, you come across some really interesting things along the sides of the roads. Does your town have a full-size refurbished Cold War era submarine? Because Port Burwell, Ontario has one. St. Thomas, Ontario has a life-size replica of Jumbo the elephant. Colborne, Ontario has the world's largest apple. In Campbellford, Ontario, they have the world's largest toonie. Just outside of Port Stanley, Ontario, you have North America's smallest Union Station train terminal. In Cavendish, Prince Edward Island, you have Anne of Green Gables house. The bridge that goes between Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick is the longest bridge in the world to go across seasonally ice-covered water. Heartland, New Brunswick has the world's longest covered bridge. Nakawik, New Brunswick has the world's largest axe. Shediac, New Brunswick has the world's largest lobster. The little town of Earlton has a giant bison. Larder Lake has a giant trout. In Cochrane, Ontario, they actually have a giant polar bear. In the small town of Moonbeam, Ontario, yes, that's the actual name of the town, they have a flying saucer. The town of Wawa, Ontario has this giant Canada goose. In the small town of Echo Bay, Ontario, you have this giant loony. Well, in Sudbury, Ontario, you have the world's biggest nickel. Well, in Beardmore, Ontario, they have a giant fishing snowman. In Nipigon, Ontario, you have this very impressive totem pole. It is quite high. This is actually very impressive. And interestingly, it's right in the Tim Hortons drive-thru. Well, friends, the search is over because in Vermilion Bay, Ontario, I have found Bigfoot. In Kenora, Ontario, they have Husky the giant muskie. And it is giant. Well, in the little town of Emo, Ontario, they have this tiny functioning church. Well, in the small town of White River, Ontario, you have this large statue to Winnie the Pooh. And in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, you have a really big baseball. In Gimli, Manitoba, you have this really large Viking. In Altona, Manitoba, you have the largest painting on an easel in the entire world. Well, friends, in Morden, Manitoba, they have the world's largest mosasaur. His name is Bruce. Roland, Manitoba, the world's biggest pumpkin. In Portage La Prairie, Manitoba, you have the world's largest can of Coke. World's biggest oil can. Arborg, Manitoba has the biggest curling stone in the entire world. Well, friends, I knew I would find it sooner or later traveling through Canada. In Comarno, Manitoba, you have the world's largest mosquito. North Battleford, Saskatchewan has a giant mountie. North Battleford also has a bison, but I would suggest not touching it because it is actually made completely from barbed wire. In the little town of Kipling, Saskatchewan, you have the world's largest paperclip. Well, friends, I am in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. This is Mac, the moose, and he is the tallest moose in the world. I'm in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and I am standing inside the world's largest teepee. I am in Drumheller, Alberta, and they have the largest dinosaur in the world. In Lethbridge, Alberta, you have the world's longest and tallest steel viaduct train bridge in the world. Well, in Glendon, Alberta, if you guessed that they had the world's largest pierogi on a fork, then you'd be correct. Vilna, Alberta, the world's largest mushroom. In Andrew, Alberta, the world's largest mallard duck. "30 kilometers south of Golden, British Columbia. And they have the world's biggest paddle. In Radium Hot Springs, they apparently have giant bighorn sheep horns.